All right, good morning again, guys. Thanks for joining us today. We will be commencing our paper one marathon for CSEC mathematics. It's not a lot of us here right now, and so I'm hoping that we'll be responsive and we'll work the paper together. So I'm going to be asking your responses, and you guys should be working the questions alongside me, and sometimes you'll be telling me the answers that should go for respective questions. So get out your calculators, your pencils, your papers, whatever it is that you will need for the session today, right? All right, so let's look at our first question. It says open bracket, -3 squared plus open bracket, -2 close bracket squared. Forgot to mention that the -3 was inside the bracket before, is equal to, and they give us four options here. A, -13, B, -10, C, 13, and D is 25. So the three options that we have here, what is the correct answer? You guys can feel free to open your mics and respond. Okay.
C.
C for -13. All right. Anyone else with a different answer? We
No,
all
sir.
agree.
No, C, sir.
C. C as in cat. Right? Everyone agrees with that. All right. So the answer is C. Remember, when you square a negative, it becomes a positive number. So -3 squared is 9. -2 squared is 4. 9 plus 4 is going to give us 13. So the answer is C. Second question, what percentage of 40 is 8? Right? Remember, percentage means out of 100, and they've given us four options here: 5%, 20%, 32%, and 150%. Now, right away, you guys should be able to identify that D cannot possibly be the answer. Anything greater than 100% means that the number exceeds what you're looking for, right? So 150% of 40 would be 60. So in that case, 60 is larger than 40. So it's going to have a value that is greater than 100. So out of the three other options, A, B, or C, what is our answer?
B.
B for boy, 20%. Anyone disagrees? You can feel free to open your mics, right? Or if you're agreeing or disagreeing, you can just respond. I'd like to hear some voices. I hear no one disagreeing, so I'm going to agree that our answer is 20%. Was it? It's always times 100, so 8 divided by 40. Then just multiply this by 100, and you will get 20. Question 3 says, when 0.45 is written as a common fraction in its simplest form, the result is A, 9/20, B, 4/5, C, 9/10, or D, 5/4. Anyone disagrees with me?
Sir, what did you say the answer was?
A as in apple,
Oh, yes, sir.
right? Remember, when we have two decimal places, right, 0.45, that's the same as saying 45 divided by 100, right? And if it was only one decimal place, it would be 10. If there were three decimal places, it would be 1,000. We just simplify that fraction. 5 into 45 goes 9 times, and 5 into 20. 5 into 100 goes 20 times. Question 4. If 235 multiplied by 48.7 is equal to 11,444 and 5 or 0.5, then 2.35 multiplied by 4.87 should be equal to which of the following answers? A, B, C, or D?
A.
A as in apple, that's correct. I think I'm only hearing one person so far. What happened to the rest of you guys? Not as vocal. Come on, we have our exam next week. You guys should be confident in some of these simple calculations. Don't be shy. Question 5 says a test was marked out of 80. A boy scored 60% of the marks on the test. How many marks did he score? Again, this is a simple calculation with percentages. The answers they've given us are A, 20, B, 48, C, 60, and D, 75, right? So if you got 60% out of a test marked out of 80, what was his score?
B.
What's that? Dog or
B.
boy?
Boy.
Boy, that is correct. B is indeed correct. Again, you're trying to figure out what score he got, so just call that X, right? Let me use this instead. Let us call that X. Score you got, let us call that X. Test was marked out of 80, right? Percentage means to multiply by 100 and say that that is equal to 60%. To find out what X is, we just transpose this equation, right? Easy to this, cross it off, 8 right here. This becomes a 4, and this 10 becomes a 5. So we end up getting 5x divided by 4 is equal to 60. And you guys should be able to transpose that and get 20 as your answer. So 60 times 4 divided by 5 should give 48, sorry. And we're moving on to question 6. Dan sold 40 concert tickets in 5 days. Each day he sold 3 tickets more than the previous day. What is the ratio of the number of tickets sold on day 3, the number of tickets sold on day 5? They gave us 4 options: 1 to 7, 4 to 7, 7 to 4, or 5 to 11. What is our answer? Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Or is it D? Right? Now, if you don't know how to work this question, then I'd advise you to first start with algebra. Right? So what the question told us was that he sold 40 concert tickets in 5 days. So 40 is the total number of tickets sold. And let us say that on the first day, he sold X tickets, right? Then on the second day, he would have sold X plus 3 tickets. So X tickets for the first day, then X plus 3, right? And then he sold 3 more for the third day, so it becomes X plus 6. I'm just going to shorthand it a bit. Fourth day, sold 3 more, so X plus 9. And then the fifth day, he sold 3 more again. So we have X plus 12, right? Let's write it right here. Now, if we add up all of those numbers, we're going to get 5 X's. Because you have X on the first day, the X for the second day, the X for the third day, the X for the fourth day, and X for the fifth day. So we have 5 X's. And then we add 3 plus 6, that gives us 9. Add 9 to that again, that gives us 18. And we add 12 to that, which gives us 30. So 5X plus 30, which is the total number of tickets he sold, is going to be equal to 40. Right? If we simplify and transpose, we get 5x is equal to 10. You subtract 30 from both sides, you get 5x is equal to 10. And it's clear to see that x is going to be equal to 2 in this example. So on the first day, he sold 2 tickets. On the third day, he sold X plus 2, where X is 2. So on the third day, he sold 8 tickets, right? And then on the fifth day, he would have sold X plus 12 tickets, where X is again 2. So we have 14 tickets on the fifth day. So our ratio is 8 to 14, but we can simplify that as both numbers are even numbers, so we can divide both of them by 2. So our ratio becomes 4 to 7. Right? Follow?
Yes, sir.
Right. So let's mark that as our answer, which is 4 to 7 right here. A little bit of work, but if you take it piece by piece, you eventually get the answers one step at a time. Question 7. Which of the following sets is defined by x is an integer in the range -2 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 4. So they're just asking us to identify the integers that fall between that range. Remember, integers are basically your whole numbers and 0 and negative numbers, right? So it's going to be -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the answer for this is D. Now question 8. The set of positive integers that is divisible by 6 is an example of A, a finite set, B, an empty set, C, an infinite set, or D, an improper set. What answer do we have? Right. Adriana, what answer do you have for question 8? Can send it in the chat or you can open your mic.
An infinite set.
An infinite set? All right.
Oh, wait,
I agree.
That's the question.
So you're saying that it's
Finite
not
set.
infinite?
It's a finite.
It's a
set. I didn't see the 6.
All right, so it sets of positive integers that is divisible by 6, an example of a finite set. All right, anyone agrees with her? Anyone disagrees with her? Andre, what say you? Finite or infinite? Or is the answer improper or empty? So Andre is not responding. Anyone else? All right. So I would say that the answer is actually an infinite set, right? And my reason for saying that is this: the set of integers itself is an infinite set. So it goes up to infinity, right? Even if you can't, so integers goes from negative infinity to positive integers. We're looking at positive integers, that's from 1 to positive infinity, right? So that set is infinite. And if you were to pick out all the, I'm coming to you. If you were to pick out all the numbers in that set that would be divisible by 6, you'd still get an infinite set. Because any number that you can think about as your last number that is divisible by 6, I can just add 6 to that, and I still get a new number that's divisible by 6. So let's say, for argument's sake, that our infinity was at 100, and you said that the last number that was divisible by 6 is 96, then I could say that infinity plus 6 is also divisible by 6. So 100, well, 96 plus 6, which will be 104, is also divisible by 6. So I say that it's an infinite set, but I can see where persons might think that the set is finite. You're going to say something, Adriana. If you disagree with what I'm saying, I'm open to your interpretation of the question.
Oh, I just realized I read the question wrong. When it said divisible by 6, I was thinking of factors of 6 instead.
Okay, all right, no problem. But I hope my explanation makes sense to you guys. Right? Question 9 says, if You guys are familiar with what the notation means here, but it says if the number of elements in the union, right, or the number of elements in the Venn diagram for argument's sake is 25, right? And the number of elements in A, which is set A, is 14. The number of elements in set B is 15. And the number of elements in the union of A and B is 23. Then they want us to determine the number of elements in the intersection. So to read that again, the number of elements that we're considering overall, so in our Venn diagram, or every element is 25. So there are 25 elements that we're considering total. It says the number of elements in set A is 14. Number of elements in set B is 15. The union of A and B has 23 elements combined, and they want us to determine the intersection. Now, in order for us to get the answer for this question, what we'd have to do is that we'd have to use some probability equations, which essentially says that the number of elements in the union, I'm going to shorthand it here again. So I'm not going to write out the full notations. Right? So it says the union, U, is equal to set A plus set B, and then we're going to subtract the intersection of A and B, right? Remember, I'm just shorthanding it. So the union of both sets A and B, that's 23. A has 14 elements here. B has 15 elements. And we're to determine what N is, right? So that gives us 23 is equal to 14 plus 15, that's 29, minus N. And so N is going to be equal to 29 minus 23, and that is 6. Our answer is going to be C. Right? So the union plus set, the union is equal to set A plus set B less the intersection of both of those sets. Just to give you guys a visual representation, let's say that this is, let me do that again. Let's say that this is my set A, right? This is my set B, right? And then this is U. So U has everything in it. This is A, right? This is E. And big U here is the set of the universal set. So our union of A and B is going to be this right here. Everything right here is A union B. Right. And what you'll realize is that if you add A to B, you'll be double counting the intersection right here, right? And that's why you have to subtract all this piece, to get the number of elements, the correct number of elements. All right, so now we're moving on. Question 10 and 11, which says that items 10 and 11 refer to the following Venn diagram, which shows the universal set U and two sets T and C that represent the students in a class who play tennis and chess. Right? And then asks question 10, how many students play both games? Do anyone want to answer that question first? How many students play both tennis and chess? How much, what you said? A, so 2. All right. That is correct. And you're just looking for the region where both sets overlap. And C is a subset of T. So the elements in C are also in T. Now, 11 says, how many students play exactly one game, right? Lisan, do you want to attempt that one? How many students play exactly one game? I'm not hearing a response. Anyone wants to take or try that question? How many students play exactly one game given the diagram? What's that? B or D?
D.
Boy or dog? I'm not hearing.
Boy. No,
Boy.
Cat. What is it?
Cat?
Yeah.
Cat 4. Right. You are correct. The answer is indeed 4. Now, that's what CXC intended for you to answer. However, I do have a problem with how this question was structured, right? So this is beside the point. You should have answered 4 for this question because Abby, Kayla, Tom, and Alex, they only play one out of the 2 games specified, tennis and chess, right? Now, Doug, Chaz, and Dora, they're outside of those 2 sets, but they don't tell us if those students actually play any other games. So it could be that Dora, Chaz, and Doug, they only play football. That the question didn't tell us that, right? It could be that they play football and basketball. Again, question didn't tell us that, right? And so the safe assumption is 4, right? That's the best bet given the information that we have. But I do think that the question is a bit ambiguous as it relates to Doug, Chaz, and Dora. But regardless, none of the options that they gave us was 7. So you don't have to worry about that case for this specific question. But I just want you guys to bear that in mind. You never know when CXC might adjust a question or give you a similar question, right? The point that I'm just trying to make is that they didn't give us any information about Doug, Chaz, or Dora. So we don't know if they only play one other sport or they play multiple other sports. But let's continue. Question 12. The 30 students in Teacher May's class have either a dog or a cat or none of the two? You see, this is what I like. This question was very explicit, right? Now it says 16 students have a dog, and they're going to say that's going to be set D. 12 students have a cat, set C, and the remainder have neither a cat nor a dog. Which of the following then Venn diagrams correctly represent this information? So
D.
they've given us. Go ahead. Let me hear your answer. When
D.
you're saying boy,
No, D.
D as in dog. All right. Why do you say D as in dog?
Because D, they said one set as 16, other as 12, and one as none. The rest of them intercept. That mean both play either tool, and they didn't give that information.
That's correct, right? It's very important that you recognize that. Question says that they either have a dog, they either have a cat, or they have none of the two. So there are three circumstances. The question never gave us any information that would suggest that someone has both a cat and a dog. And all of the three other graphs, A, B, and C, there's an intersection between those two sets. So the only possible answer left is D for dog. Question 13. At a bank, EC dollars, $2.60 EC is equivalent to $1 US. For every US dollar exchanged, 10 cents EC is deducted as an exchange fee. How much EC dollars will Leon receive if we exchange 1,000 US dollars? So our answers are 990 cents, $2,360.34, $2,500, or $2,600, right? I am going to say that the answer is C, and there are two ways that we can go about calculating our answer. The first way is that we can convert the $1,000 to EC using our exchange rate of $2.60. So that's going to be 1,000 times 2.6 to give us 2,600. And then afterwards, we need to subtract our exchange fee, which says that it is 10 cents for each dollar. 10 cents times 1,000 is going to give you $100. So we have 2,600 less $100 to give us 2,500. So that's one way we could work the question. The other way that we could work the question is that we could use our net exchange rate, right? So the exchange rate is $2.60, and there's a charge of 10 cents. So our net exchange rate would be $2.50. So for each US dollar that you give them, you will get $2.50. You multiply that by 1,000, you get 2,500. So our answer for 13 is C. All right. Now, guys, if at any point throughout this session I say something and to you it sounds incorrect, or you believe that there is a correct answer, please feel free to open your mics and say something. I can make a mistake. I could have not factored in some important information in my calculations. I could have subtracted when I should have added. Anything is possible. So if you have an answer that's different from me, feel free to open your mic or send it in the chat. All right? I won't see it immediately, but I'll check the chat periodically. Question 14 says, a dress which costs 1,800. Oh, you want me to go over question 13? Sure, that's fine, right? So what I said was that there are two ways that we can calculate the answer for question 13. The first method is that we can subtract our exchange fee from our gross exchange, right? So the money that we receive, and then we subtract the exchange fee, or we can just use our net exchange rate, right? The net exchange rate would be our exchange rate adjusted for our exchange fee. So method one, going over that calculation, we would have right. So for method one, it would be 1,000 times $2.60 to give us 2,600, right? Then remember, for every dollar that we change, we have to pay a fee. So that's going to be 1,000 multiplied by 10 cents, so 0.10, right? That's going to be 100. So we'll be deducting our fee from the gross amount of money that we receive to get 2,500. Right? So that's method one. Method two is that we can use our net exchange rate, right? So for every dollar that we convert, they use a rate of $2.60, and then they take away 10 cents, right? And so our net exchange rate, which would have factored in our fee, is $2.50, right? And so 1,000 times 2.5 is going to give us 2,500. So that is method two. Method two uses the net exchange rate. Method one uses the gross exchange rate. The net exchange rate takes into account your fees that you have to pay, right? And the net exchange rate is applicable because the fee is charged per dollar that you convert. If it was just a flat fee, regardless of how much money it is that you convert, then you could not use a net exchange rate method, right? You'd have to use method one if they said that the exchange fee is $50, regardless of how much money you convert, right? So I hope that helps. Starting to think that going forward, I'm going to use a different color when I'm writing. Yellow might be a bit too difficult for you guys to see, so probably pick something darker like blue. All right. On to question 14. A dress which costs $1,800 is being sold at a discount of 10%. The amount of the discount is, again, guys, simple percentage calculation. Remember, percentage means out of 100, 10% is 1/10 of the figure, right? And so you just need to find 10%. The question asked us to find the amount of the discount and not the selling price of the item. So be very careful there, right? So you did do your calculations correctly to get that the discount amount is $180, but you shouldn't subtract it from 1,800. So be very clear or be very careful when you're doing that, right? So 10% of 1,800, you're just dividing that by 10. Move in decimal place 1 point, so you get $180. So that is our discount amount, right? Amount of discount is 180. If the question asked us instead to find the final price or the selling price after discount, then it would be $1,620. Question 15. If $7,000 is borrowed at a rate of 5% per annum for 3 years, what would be the simple interest, right? Simple interest, who wants to take this one? What about Tamasha? What's the simple interest for this question here, question 15? There's $7,000 or principal. It's borrowed at a rate of 5% for 3 years. What is the simple interest? Right, guys, remember, simple interest is principal times rate times time. And so for simple interest would be equal to 7,000. Yes, go ahead.
The answer is D.
D as in dog.
Yes, sir.
Right, you're correct. Answer is D. Thank you, Tamasha. And we'll be moving on to the next question, which is 16. So 16 says that an article bought for $125 was sold for $100. What is the loss as a percentage of the cost price? So it cost us $125. We sold it for $100. They want to know what is the percentage of the loss of the cost price.
Where B?
B as in boy.
Yes, sir.
Why do you say B?
$25 of is the last.
Yeah, so $25 is the loss. Remember, the question asks us to calculate the percentage of the cost price. So it has to be the loss, which is $25, divided by the cost, which is 125. So put that in your calculator and tell me what answer you get. So 25 divided by 125. Important word here is percentage of the cost price. So 25
Sir, the
divided
answer
by
is A.
A, correct? So it is 20%. Don't feel any way about making mistakes, guys. It's better for you to make the mistakes here we pick them up and you guys can answer the questions correctly in the exam next week, right? So simple stuff like that. It's very easy for you. And under the pressure of the exam, you might be going into the question and you forget to read the question properly, or what you read was not what was asked, right? So just be careful to read the questions properly and to try and answer what they ask of you, right? It's a very common mistake to make in exams, right? Happens to the best of us. Question 17, the cash price of a television set is $350. When bought on hire purchase, a deposit of $35 is required and followed by 12 monthly payments of $30 each. How much is saved by paying cash? We're currently doing the 2023 paper, right? And so this is a hire purchase question, which is pretty applicable to what it is that happens in everyday life. I mean, a lot of times you guys hear it on the television or on the radio. You can go to this store and you only pay X amount of money, and then you pay Y monthly, right? For X amount of time. So they want us to determine how much money we'd save if we paid all the money upfront instead of going the higher purchase option. And so to do this calculation, you need to find out first how much money you'd pay in total under the higher purchase option, right? So we need a deposit of $35. So we'll have that first, right? So $35. Then we're going to add monthly payments to it. So 12 monthly payments of $30 each. So that's 12 multiplied by 30. So 35 plus 12 multiplied by 30. And this is in a bracket, guys. So you have to do 12 by 30 first. That gives us 360. You add 35 to that, you get 395. That's what you pay in total under the hire purchase agreement, right? And they want to know how much money you'd save if you just pay in cash right away. So it would be $350 if you pay it in cash. The higher purchase option is $395. So the amount of money you would save is $45. Right. And it's not a matter of cheating your customer. Remember, the company is giving you an item while you're unable to pay the full cost of it, right? And so they have to account for that, and so they have to charge you some amount of money to make up for that potential loss, right? Anything can happen to you and you don't repay them or pay them the costs that you should have. And so they'll usually charge you a little bit more. Same thing with car loans or your mortgages, right? Not your mortgage, your parents' mortgages. So if you guys in the future ever decide to purchase something at higher purchase, you need to consider what your total payment on the higher purchase is and how much you'd save if you pay for it in cash. Right. Moving on to our next question, which is 18. Says, if the simple interest on $900 at 4% per annum for T years is $108, what is the value of T? So again, simple interest is principal times rate times time. So 108 is equal to our principal of $900 multiplied by our rate of 4%, which is the same as 4 divided by 100, multiplied by T for time. That's the amount of years. So 4% of 900 is going to be 36. So 36T is equal to 108. And at this point, it's just simple division. 108 divided by 36 is going to give us 3. So in 3 years, we would have got $108 as our simple interest. $19, at the end of any year, a car is worth 5% less than what it was worth at the beginning of the year. If a car is worth $19,000 in December 2021, what is the value in January 2021, right? So they have given us the value of the car at the end of the year, and they want us to determine what the value was at the beginning of the year, right? After that 5% depreciation in the value of the car. Don't know if you guys realize, but a lot of the questions we've done so far involves percentages. So be sure to brush up on how it is that you work your questions, right? So to determine the answer for this question, let us say that our beginning value was X, right? And after 1 year, it's going to lose 5% of its value. So at the end of the year, it's going to be worth 95% of its value. If you lose 5% of something, what you have is 100. What you have is 95% remaining. You lose 5%, you have 95% remaining, right? And X times 95% is 19,000. And so to determine X, we transpose and we get that X is equal to 19,000. 19,000 multiplied by 100. The 100 was dividing on the left-hand side of the equation. So when we bring it over, we have to multiply. And we have to divide all of this by 95 on the left-hand side of the equation. The 95 was multiplied. So when we bring it over to the right-hand side, we have to divide by it. You put that in your calculators, tell me what do you get as your answer. So 19,000 multiplied by 100 and divided by 95. What is the answer that we should get?
Sir, 20,000.
That is correct, 20,000. Twenty says a man's regular pay is $8 per hour up to 40 hours. overtime is twice the payment for regular time, right? So if his regular pay is $18 per hour, his overtime pay is $16 per hour. If he was paid $480, how many hours of overtime work did he do? Right. Who wants to take question 20? Anyone? Remember, $480 is his total pay. So that would include his regular hours plus his overtime hours, right? So $480 would be equal to the pay that he gets for working his regular 40 hours plus the pay that he gets for working overtime for T hours.
Sir, A.
What you said the answer is?
A.
A as in apple? I think you said A as in apple. That
Yes, sir.
is correct. Answer is 10. Right? And just to check our answer, can the 40 times 8 plus 16 times 10 in our calculators and see what our answer is, right? 40 times 8, that is 320. Sorry, that shouldn't be 50, that should be 10. And 16 times 10 is 160. So 160 plus 320 is 480. Question 21, no? 7 times the product of two numbers, A and B, may be written as 7AB, which is A, 7 times product of two numbers. So AB, 7AB, A. That should be clear to everyone. And now question 22, bit of fractions and some transposition. 1 divided by 2x plus 1 divided by 3x is equal to A. A is 2 divided by 5x squared. B is 5 divided by 6x. C is 5 divided by 6x squared. And D for dog is 2 divided by 5x, right? So someone says that the answer is B, which is 5 divided by 6x. Anyone disagrees? I hear no one disagreeing. And I also agree that the answer is 5 over 6x, right? So let us do that for you guys, you know, whenever you're working fractions of on like denominators, you always try to find the lowest common multiple of those two numbers. So in this case, we have 2x and we have 3x. Some people might be tempted to say that the lowest common multiple is 6x squared, That's not the case. The actual lowest common multiple would actually be 6x. 2x can go into 6x, and 3x can also go into 6x. Now, if you had used 6x squared, you would have still got the same answer in the end. It's just that your calculation would be a little bit more tedious than if you had just used 6x. 2x into 6x goes 3 times, and 3x into 6x goes 2 times. So 3 plus 2 is equal to 5, and our answer is 5 over 6x. Again, if you had used 6x squared, you would have gotten 3x plus 5x in the numerator. And then you'd realize that x in the numerator and x squared in the denominator, we could divide those. So we still end up with the 5 over 6x. Question 23. What is the value of, and this is a fraction now, x squared plus 3y in the numerator divided by xy in the denominator if x is 4 and y is 2. Someone just plug those numbers into their calculator and tell me the result that they get. And remember that they've expressed these in mixed fractions, right? So you're going to have to do the converter as necessary. Some calculators come with a fraction button. If your calculator is like that, it's best to use a fraction button when you're doing this question. If your question doesn't come with a fraction button and you have to use the division, please ensure that you put a bracket around the x squared plus 3y, right? So anyone has placed that number in their calculators yet? Remember, x is 4 and y is 2. So anywhere you see x, replace it with 4. Anywhere you see y, replace it with 2. So what is my answer for 23?
D.
D as in dog. You said 2 3/4. That is indeed correct. If you didn't get that as your answer, then you likely made an error when you put the values in your calculator. Remember, if you're using the division symbol, put the numerator in a bracket. If you're using a division symbol and your fraction displays it and your calculator displays it as a fraction, then you should be fine. The answer is D, 2 3/4. Question 24. If 5 open bracket 2x minus 1 is equal to 35, then they want us to determine what x is. All right, so I'm going to double back to question 23 and then we'll go back to question 24. So we're going to work it out manually. Right? So x squared, remember x is 4, so we're going to have, not use this. Right. Right. So x squared, and where we have x, replace it with 4. So this becomes 4 squared. plus 3y, and where we say y, replace it with 2. So that's 3 open bracket 2. All right? And the denominator is xy. So x is 4, y is 2. All right. Simplify again. 4 squared, that's going to be 16. Plus 3 times 2, that's going to be 6. And 4 times 2, that's going to be 8. And we just add those together. 6 plus 16, that's going to be 22 over 8. You can simplify that. Both numbers are divisible by 2. They're even numbers, right? So 2 into 22 goes 11 times. 2 into 8 goes 4 times. Now that we have the improper fraction, we're going to write that as a mixed fraction. So you ask yourself, how many times can 4 go into 11? Goes 2 times with a remainder of 3. And so our answer is 2 3/4. So let's stay on the screen a little bit while we work. Question 24. So if 5 open bracket 2x minus 1 is equal to 35, then they ask us to determine what x is. Again, this is just transposition. So 5 open bracket 2x minus 1 is equal to 35. Now, for persons that have trouble transposing things, then you could always use trial and error for your answer, right? So what you could do is that you could pick up your calculator, and anywhere you see x, you replace it with one of the options. So you could put in 5 open bracket 2 open bracket -4 close bracket minus 1 close bracket, and you press enter or equal on the calculator, and you look to see what value you get, right? If you don't get 35, then you try the next value, then you try 1/4. So you put in back the same equation, but instead of 4, this time you're going to use a quarter. Instead of -4, this time you're going to use 1/4. It's going to be 5 open bracket 2 open bracket 1/4 close bracket minus 1 close bracket, press enter or the equal sign. If you don't get 35, you try the next number. You try the next one, which is 3, right? So 5 open bracket 2 times open bracket 3 close bracket minus 1 close bracket. If you don't get 35, then you try the 4th number. And if you've tried all 4 numbers and you don't get 35, then it's either one of 2 things. It's either you entered something in your calculator wrong when you were trying trial and error method, or 2, that question is faulty. And it's very unlikely that CXC is going to give you a faulty question. So if you're going with the trial and error method, it's probably just best to double check all of those calculations. Ensure that your brackets open and close at the correct places. Your negative signs are actual negative signs and not positive signs. But let's continue with our actual transposition, right? So now I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So I get 2x minus 1 is going to be equal to 7, right? Again, you want to get the 2x on one side by itself. And so you're going to transpose and move that -1 to the right-hand side. So it becomes a +1 to give you 8. 7 plus 1 gives you 8. Right? And then that's just division by 2 to give you 4.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead. You can go ahead. You guys aren't allowed to use calculator?
no, sir.
I'm trying to remember. Let's see. Does this paper have the instructions and facts? Let's see. Even if you can't use calculator, you can still apply the trial and error method. It's just that it's going to be more tedious for you because you will have to do each calculation by hand, one by one. Let's see. There should be one paper in here somewhere with the instructions. Let's see. Oh, they're not allowed. Not allowed for paper one. Interesting. That's unfortunate. But it's not like this kind of these kind of calculations are too difficult for you guys. You could do them manually. Where was I? Yes. So we got 4 as our answer for 24. And 2 and negative 3. 2 and 3/4, sorry, for our answer for 23. Right. Continuing, question 25. John has X marbles and Max has twice as many marbles as John. Max gives John 5 of his marbles. How many marbles does John now have? So that's X minus 5 or X plus 5, 2X minus 5 or 2X plus 5. Should be clear that the only correct answer here is going to be B, X plus 5. John initially had X marbles and then got 5 more, so that's X plus 5. Question 26, given that 3 star 6 is equal to 12 and 2 star 5 is equal to 9, then A star B may be defined as, and they've given you 4 options here. Now, a question like this, the best method to work it is trial and error. So you're just going to try each of the answers, each of the potential answers to see if you get the correct numbers, right? So let's try A, where we're going to use the first number as A and the second number as B. So option A says 4 open bracket B minus A. So we're going to try 3 star 6 in that. So 4 open bracket 6 minus 3. 6 minus 3, that is 3. We multiply that by 4, we get 12, all right? That looks like it could be an answer. Now let's try the second pair of numbers to see if it works. 4, open bracket, 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2, that's 3. 3 times 4, that's 12. So we know that that is not the correct relationship, but it only works for one pair of numbers. So now we're going to try B, which is A squared minus B, right? So 3 squared minus 6. 3 squared is 9. 3 squared is 9. And subtract 6 from that, you get 3. So clearly B is not the answer. Let's try C. C says 6A minus B. 6 times 3, 18 minus 6, we get 12. All right, this could be a potential answer. Let's try the second pair of numbers now. 6 times 2, that's 12, minus 5, and that is 7. So that is not our answer. Right? And then D is 2A plus B. So let's try that. Now, 2 times 3, that's 6. Plus 6, 12. So D is a potential answer. Let's try the second pair of numbers. 2 times 2, that's 4. Plus 5, that is 9. So D is our correct answer for 26. All right. So as I said, for 26, the best course of action for this question is trial and error. Now we're going to double back to question 25, right? Now, someone wanted to know why 25, 2x minus 5 isn't the answer. And as someone rightfully said, the question asked for John, right? So if they had asked for Max, then the answer would be 2x minus 5. But because they asked for John, it's just x plus 5. 27. Now they've given us this matrix, and they asked us to determine the order of matrix A. What is the order of matrix A? Anyone can answer?
3 by 4.
3 by
4.
3 by 4. That is correct. Remember, it's always row by column. There are 3 rows and 4 columns. So our order is 3 by 4. And 28, they've asked us to determine the determinant of matrix P. What is the determinant of matrix P? Anyone can answer? Remember, determinant is the product of the leading diagonal less the product of the non-leading diagram. The leading diagonal is this right here. That's leading. And you're going to subtract the product of the non-leading diagonal, this right here. And so it's going to be 8 times 5 less 7 minus 6. And the answer is -2 for our determinant. Question 29, P is equal to 3, 7, Q is equal to -2, 5. Vector P minus Q is represented by which of the following options? This is going to be vector subtraction, and it's pretty simple, right? Remember, you always subtract numbers in corresponding rows. So if we're going to subtract P and Q, it's going to be 3 minus -2 and 7 minus 5. 3 minus -2 is the same as 3 plus 2 and 7 minus 5, right? Brackets for a vector. 3 plus 2, that's 5. 7 minus 5, that's going to be 2. And so our answer is C, 5, 2. 30 refers to the following diagram of triangle OLM, in which R is the midpoint of OL and T is the midpoint of OM. Further, vector OR is A and OT is B, right? And they want us to find RM and express it in terms of A and B. Now, guys, remember that vectors are quantities that have magnitude and direction. So when you're combining them, you always have to consider the direction of the vector. Now, the question wants us to find this vector here, RM, right? We don't know what RM, but we can figure it out by using an alternative route, right? The alternative route is that we can go from R to O, and then from O to T, and then from T to M, right? Now, when we're going from R to O, that's in the opposite direction as going from O to R. So this has to be negative A. And write it a bit slant. So negative A for RO. When you're going from O to T, that's going to be B because it's in the same direction. So that's going to be B. Now, the question told us that T is a midpoint on OM. So if O to T is B, then T to M is also B, right? And now when we combine all three vectors, we get 2B minus A. So minus A plus B is the same as 2B minus A. Follow? All right. We move on to the next question. It's 5, 2. And 2B minus A. Question 31. Given that 1 milliliter is equal to 1 over 1,000, 1 millimeter is equal to 1 over 1,000 meters, 2,500 millimeters in meters is A, 0.25, B, 2.5, C, 25, or D, 250. What is our answer?
B.
Boy or dog?
Boy.
Boy.
Boy, that is correct. Next question, the volume of a cube whose edge is 10 centimeters is 30 cm cube, 100 cm cube, 300 cm cube, or 1,000 cm cube. What is our answer? Remember, a cube is a three-dimensional object in which the length is equal to the width, and it is also equal to the height.
30.
So the answer is, for the volume, I think I heard dog, which is 1,000. So that is correct. At a party, a number of guests were served 15 liters of champagne. Each guest had 2 glasses of champagne, and each glass held 150 milliliters. Assuming no spillage and no wastage, how many guests were at the party? Right? So first step is that we're going to convert 15 liters to milliliters. Now 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters, so 15 liters is 15,000 milliliters. 1 liter, 1,000 milliliters, 15 liters, 15,000 milliliters. Now it says that each guest had 2 glasses, each of 150 milliliters, right? And so they want us to determine the number of guests, assuming no spillage. 150 into 150 one time. 150 into 15,000 was 100 times. 2 into 2 was 1 time, and 2 into 100 was 50 times. So our answer is 50 guests were at the party. (34) If the area of the trapezium PQRS is 65 centimeters squared, what is its height? Right. Adriana, you want to try this one? All right, so you can continue working. The area of a trapezium is equal to half its base plus its top length, right? And you're going to multiply that by its height. So area of a trapezium is equal to half, open bracket A plus B, close bracket, multiplied by height. In this case, our A is 8 and our B is 18. You could also switch those numbers around. Won't affect anything. You could say A is 18 and B is 8. Won't affect the calculation here. And they ask you to transpose that and figure out what h, or the height of the trapezium, is, given that our area is 65. So Adrian or anyone else, have you calculated the height as yet? All right, so I help you guys. So 65 is equal to half, open bracket, 8 plus 18, close bracket, h, right? 8 plus 18, that is going to be 26, and half of 26 is 13, so end up getting 65 is equal to 13h. And if we divide 65 by 13, what do we get as our answer?
5.
D.
That is correct. Our answer is 5. Let me check something real quickly. Let's see. Right. I was hoping that they would put it, right, here it is. So if it is that you guys have problem remembering formulas, you can always just double check to see if they give you the formula that you need on your formula sheet. So here it is. The area of a trapezium, A is equal to half, open bracket A plus B, close bracket H, where A and B are lengths of the parallel sides and H is a perpendicular distance between the parallel sides. So if it is, as I said, you don't remember the formula, you can always just check your sheet to see if it is on it. Now, sometimes you're writing down the formula, you don't remember if it's a plus or a minus. Again, let's check a sheet. It might not be there, but we hope that it is there. It's always good to have an idea of some of the formulas that you can find on your formula sheet. So they have stuff like volume, circumference, area, little bit of the trigonometric ratios, and that's pretty much what they have on the formula sheet. Yeah, fine. Question 35. The perimeter of a square is 56 centimeters. What is its area in centimeter squared? Now, perimeter of a square is going to be 4L, where L is the length of one side. Right? That's going to be equal to 56. So that tells us that L is going to be 14. And to get the area of a square, you just square the length of its sides. So L squared is 196. So our answer is D for dog. 36. The distance around the edge of a circular pond is 88 meters. The radius in meters is, again, a little bit of algebra here. It's pretty simple. Now, they say the distance around the edge of a circle, and we know that the distance around a circle is the same thing as its circumference. So this question is saying that the distance or the circumference of a circular pond is 88, and they want us to find the radius. Now, circumference is equal to 2 pi r, where r is our radius, right? And if we transpose that for our radius, we're going to get 88 divided by 2 pi. Question 37. The area of the triangle is 14 centimeters squared. What is the area of the compound shape? Anyone want to suggest how it is that we're going to find this answer? You don't necessarily need to know the answer off the top of your head, but if you're given this question, how would you attempt it? Go ahead.
So you don't find the base first because the base is like a part of the square,
Mm-hmm.
and then
And
you
then
check,
what next?
and then you times the base by itself to get the area.
Right? And then one more step after that. Remember, you want to find the area of the compound shape. So you just found the area of the square. What's the next step that you need to do?
Add them both.
Right. So add both of them. Add the area of the triangle to the area of the square. Right. So 14 is the area for a triangle. It's going to be equal to half base times height. Half. We don't know our base, let's call that b. And our height is 4. Half of 4, that's going to be 2. So 14 is equal to 2b. 14 is equal to 2b, therefore b is equal to 7. Now to find the area of the square, as you said, you just need to square that, as the base is also equal to the length of one of our sides in the square. So 7 squared, 49, is equal to b squared. And then finally, we just add that to the area of the triangle. So 49 plus 13 and our plus 14 gives us 63 as our answer. So our answer is B for boy. "38. On leaving Trinidad, the time on a pilot's watch is 2300 hours. When he arrived at his destination at the same time zone on the next day, his watch showed 300 hours. If the average speed of the aircraft for the entire journey was 625 kilometers per hour, and the distance covered by that aircraft is," and then they ask us to identify that. Now, speed is equal to distance divided by time. Therefore, distance must be equal to speed times time. Right? Now, our speed is 625. And we need to identify how long it took him. Now, if he left at 2300 hours on day 1, and on the next day he arrived at 300 hours, and it's in the same time zone, it means that it took him 4 hours to get to his destination. And so our distance is going to be 625 multiplied by 4. And so our answer is 2,500 kilometers. Go on, follow. Question 39. Ms. Clark arranged 15 test scores of her students in order of size and selected the 8th score for reporting purposes. Which are the following statistical measures did Ms. Clark obtain? The mean, the mode, the range, or the median? Which one is it? Is it the mean, the mode, the range, or the median? Anyone can answer?
D.
D as in dog, the median. That is correct. Now, remember guys, mean is the same thing as average, right? Mode is the most frequent response, right? Or the most frequent result. The range is the difference between the highest and the lowest. And the median is the middle result when ordered in ascending or descending order. So if there are 15 test scores, then in ascending order, the middle score will fall in position number 8. There are 7 results below that, and there are also 7 results above that. So our answer is median. And 41. They give us a cumulative frequency curve, and they ask how many students scored at most 45 marks. So we want to know the number of students that scored between 0 and 45 marks. To do that, you need to find 45 marks on your graph, which is right here. So this is 45. Then you're going to trace your line upwards, or you can just follow it with your mind's eye if you don't want to waste time tracing it. Upwards, 45. You cut the graph about here, and you're going to draw that line across, and it comes to roughly somewhere right here. My line isn't exactly straight, but if we're doing this on a piece of paper and your ruler, your line should be straight, right? And so, if 200 students took the driving test, then our answer should be greater than 160. So we can ignore A and B, which is 34 and 40, Now we need to determine whether our answer is C, 166, or D, 170, right? Now let's look at our vertical axis. Goes from 0 to 200, right? And each of those major lines is 20, right? So 20, 40, 60, 160, 180, 200. And there are 5 minor lines between each major line. So each of those minor lines is going to be worth 4. So 20 divided by 5 is going to give you 4. So looking at this graph, our blue line is just above our first minor line after 160. And so our answer is going to be 166. '41, the median mark scored by the 200 students is, now again, you're essentially looking at the middle score. So if 200 students took the test, you need to find 100th student, right? Trace across where it meets the curve, then you go down. Again, my line isn't exactly straight. There should be. Now, each of these horizontal lines is worth 5. So 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And so each minor line between the major lines is worth 1. And so our answer is going to be 37. Go and follow that. Right. So we're 2/3 through the paper. Let's just push on and see if we can finish this paper by or before 1 o'clock. So now we're on to question 42. In a box, there are 8 red, 7 blue, and 6 green marbles. 1 marble is picked up randomly. What is the probability that it is neither blue nor green? Now, the question told us that in the box, it's either red, blue, or green. So if you pick up a marble and it is not blue and it is not green, then it must be red. This question is asking us the probability of picking up a red marble. So what's the answer?
A.
A is 8/21. That is indeed correct, because there are 8 red marbles and 21 marbles total. So the probability is 8/21. Now 8 plus 7 plus 6, that gives you 21 marbles in total. B refers to the following pie chart, which shows the popular games played by 720 students, right? And it says how many students played cricket. When you look at the pie chart, there's a mixture of angles and percentages in our pie chart. And so when you're doing this question, be very careful not to confuse the 2 numbers. So on one side, I'm going to write percentages. Other side, I'm going to write the degrees. right? Should probably move that forward. Right. So when you start with sport, the percentage, and then the degrees. So my first sport is going to be football, and that's a right angle, so that's 90 degrees. Right? Now, in our pie chart or in a circle, there are 360 degrees, right? Now, 90 degrees of that 360 degrees is otherwise known as 25% or a quarter, right? So 90 divided by 360 times 100, that's 25%. My next sport is going to be basketball, right? Now, basketball is 30%. Put my 30% right here. Now we need to figure out how much degrees that is. Now, 30%, 360, 30 divided by 100 times 360. Right? So, we can divide both of those by 10. Then we can divide this 10 into 360 to give us 36. So that's going to be 3 times 36. 36 is going to be 18, carry 1. 3 times 3, 9 plus that 1, 108 degrees, right? My third sport is going to be tennis, and that's 36 degrees right here. I need to figure out percentage. So we have 36 over 360 times 100. And it's very easy to see that 36 is 1/10 of 100, or equivalently 10%. Right. Now that we've identified all of those numbers for correct sports, now we can move on to finding out what cricket is, right? Now we have 25%, 30%, and 10%, right? And the percentages must add up to 100. So 25 plus 30, that's 55, plus 10, that's 65. Therefore, we'll need 35 more percent to get it to 100%. That's 35%, right? And I could also calculate the number of degrees that is missing, right? Now, one easy way to do this is to recognize that 35% is the same as 25% plus 10%. So if we add the 90 degrees from the 25% plus the 36 degrees from the 10%, then we'll get 126 degrees for over 35%. Now, the question did ask us to calculate the number of students that played cricket, and so we're not finished as yet. There's 730 students in total, and 35% of them play cricket. Right? So 35 over 100 times 720. Right? This 0 cancels that. 5 into this goes 2 times. 5 into this goes 7 times. Right? 2 into 2 goes 1 time. 2 into 76 goes 36 times. And so we have 7 multiplied by 36. 7 6 is 42, so that's 2 carry 4. 7 3s, that's 21, plus 4, that's 25. So the number of students that play cricket is 252. Now, this is a lot of work just for 1 mark, and you didn't need to follow all the steps that I did here. I just wanted you guys to be clear and to avoid confusing your percentages from your degrees, right? But if you knew all the percentages for the correct sports, you didn't need to figure out all the degrees, right? Because they're equivalent information. Any questions for this question? You follow? Take it that we're all in agreement.
Sir,
Go ahead.
sir, I have a question, sir. So, sir, since you're not going to be able to use our calculator, right, sir? How could we
Yeah.
figure out like the the the, the degree that you told us for the certain sports?
Some of it you just have to recognize and know off the top of your head, like the 90 degrees. Everyone knows that 90 degrees is 25% of a circle. It's a quarter of a circle, right? Everyone knows that. Now, the 30%, not everyone is going to know how much degrees that is in a circle. So you're just going to have to manually calculate that degrees, or you could just, as I said, focus only on the percentages instead of doing both. So if you were focusing only on percentages, then you would only need to find what 36 degrees of the circle is in percentage and then work the question. So we have 30% for basketball, right? We know that 90 degrees is the same thing as 25% of 360, right? So we have the 25% here, and we have 30% there. 36 degrees out of 360 degrees. Again, that's an easy 10. And then you just subtract to get this as 35 right here. For me, I think the question is worked easiest with percentages. And so I would prefer if you convert numbers to percentages instead of degrees. As I said, I just did the table to show clearly that I'm not confusing the two numbers. So you don't want to add 90 degrees to 36 or 30, you don't want that 90 degrees to 30%, right? So I just did the table to separate those two numbers. But as long as you're able to manually calculate the percentages, you will be fine. And they didn't give you anything that was too difficult. The most difficult part of this question was to calculate the 252, right? 36 divided by 360 times 100 is 10%. 90 divided by 360 times 100 is 25%. And you know that the entire circle must add up to 100%. And so you subtract 10, 30, and 25 from 100, and you get the 35% for cricket. And you just find 35% or 720, which I said, that's probably the most difficult part of this calculation. But you just need to remain focused, take it step by step. If you cannot divide using big numbers as easily, stick with your small numbers. Instead of dividing by 20, maybe you're comfortable dividing by 5 and by 2, right? So you divide by your 5 first, you divide by your 2, and you divide by 2 again. If you're not comfortable dividing by 20 in one go, just take your time, go through. And a question like this, that's going to take up a lot of your time, I'd suggest that you leave it for last. So if you get to a question, you realize that it's going to take you a very long time to calculate it manually, skip the question and come back to it at the end if you have time. Because if you answer this question correctly, you're only getting 1 mark for it. And the time that you spent to answer this one question, you could have possibly answered 3 or 4 other questions. So it's best to leave the long calculation questions for last and do everything else that you can. That'd be my advice to you. Question 44 refers to the following two-way table, which shows the ways in which 200 students in a group are transported to school on a particular day. A student is picked at random from the group. What is the probability that the student is a male who traveled to school by taxi on that day, right? So first we need to identify where male and taxi intersect. So there are going to be 50 males that travel to school via taxi on that morning, right? Now, the next step is to determine what our denominator is. Is it that we're trying to find the probability that we picked a male student traveling by taxi out of all the students? No. The question asks us the probability that a male student was traveling by taxi, right? And so your denominator has to be the total number of males. But there's a probability that this student that was selected is a male who traveled to school. So the first condition is that the student must be a male. So that's 108 in the denominator. And he must have traveled to school via taxi. So that's 50 in the numerator. So 50 divided by 108. And you just simplify. 2 can go into 50, 25 times. And 2 into 108 was 54 times. The answer is B for boy.
So, sir,
Yeah?
so I wouldn't use the total, which is 200. I would use 108.
You'd use 108.
Oh, okay.
If the question, give me a second. Give me a second, let me think. So you just pick that random from the group. These are me. You know, you're actually right. It should have been 200 for the denominator. You're right. A student is picked at random from the group, right? So the group that we're selecting from would have been all students. You're right. It should have been 200 in the denominator, not 108. You're right. Thanks for that correction.
You're welcome.
Let's change that. It's going to be 50 divided by 200, which is a quarter. Again, thanks for that correction. Question 45. The point where a linear function crosses the vertical axis is known as y-intercept, x-intercept. It is always positive or it's always negative. Now, this is just some theory-based knowledge that you need to have. And anytime a function cuts the vertical axis, it cuts it at the y-intercept. Remember, your y-axis is the vertical axis. Your horizontal axis is your x-axis. So it is the y-intercept. Question 46. The equation of a line that crosses the vertical axis at the point 0,5 and that has a gradient of 4 is it A, B, C, or D?
C, sorry.
C as in cat? That is indeed correct. C is our answer. Gradient is 4, so that's 4x. And it cuts the vertical axis at the point 0,5. So when x is 0, y is 5. So the y-intercept is 5. So y is equal to 4x plus c is the equation of our line. Question 47. Which of the following graph represents a linear function? Is it A, B, C, or D? I want to hear answers. Anyone? Is it A, B, C, or D? Which one is the linear function? Anyone can answer.
D, sir.
What did you say? Dog?
Wait, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir.
Right. Who says B as in boy? No responses. Who says C as in cat? No response. Who says A as in apple? All right, I have one person that says A. And who says D as in dog? All right, so I have someone that says C. I also have someone that says A. Two persons say A. All right. Why do you say A? Anyone can open their mic. Why do you say A? Any guess is a fair guess as long as you can provide reason for guessing something, right? So you don't just look at the graphs and say, oh, A just is the answer. You must have some reason why you think A could be the answer out of all 4 possible graphs. Let's
So,
hear your process. Why do
so
you
I
say
think
A?
when it says perpendicular, you have to flip the fraction and change the sign. So I'm not sure, but something like that.
All right, I didn't hear you clear. You said something about being perpendicular. What did you say?
So I think you have to flip the fraction and change the sign.
All right, type it in the chat. I'm not hearing it. Someone else want to help her out? Why you say A?
Yes, sir. I'd like to check because you have the line going across the Y, cutting through the Y and the X axis. So then you would have like the equation will go equal to Y equal mx plus c, what in which that tells you, say it would be like a linear function.
All right, so what you're saying is that A mimics what Y is equal to mx plus c is like. You're saying that a linear function takes the form Y is equal to mx plus c, and A mimics that relationship, right?
Yes, sir.
Fine. All right, fine. Now, my question to you is this. Why not C or D? I mean, look at C. C cuts the y-axis and it also cuts the x-axis. Why not C? D doesn't cut the x-axis, but C does cut both y and axis. Right, someone says because it's a straight line and that is part of the reason. Yes, so the question did ask us which represents a linear function. So you want a line, so you know that it's not C or D. So we've eliminated those 2 possible options. Now, that leaves us with A and B. Most persons are leaning towards A. And again, because they say it mimics the form Y is equal to mx plus c. And I am in agreement with you guys. Answer is A. I would not choose B as my answer because it's not in that form. That graph is essentially something of the form x is equal to A, right? So it's a constant graph and it's a relationship where x is mapped onto multiple different numbers. So it's a one-to-many relationship and that's not a function. So A is my answer. In A, you have a one-to-one relationship. Right. So for functions, I'm pretty sure they have to be either one-to-one or many-to-one, right? So C is a function, D is a function, but they aren't linear functions, right? Get that straight? So A is the answer. Now 48, the equation of the axis of symmetry for the function y is equal to 4x minus x squared is, and the answer for this question, you just look at the graph and you'll realize easy that the answer is x is equal to 2. If you draw that line, x is equal to 2, it bisects our graph. So x is equal to 2 is this line right here. And it bisects our graph perfectly. So x is equal to 2 is the answer. (49). The line L is perpendicular to the line y is equal to 3 over 7x minus 9. What is the gradient of line L?
A.
A? Why is it A?
Because when you say perpendicular, that means the original gradient, no. The original gradient and the M2 is going to be the reciprocal of M1. So,
that's correct.
yeah.
So the gradient of perpendicular lines, they're the negative inverse of each other. So if one is 2, the other one is going to be negative half, negative reciprocal, or negative inverse of each other. So negative 7 over 3 is correct. Question 50. G of x is equal to 7x minus 3 divided by 5. Then G of 6 is equal to, again, this is a function question here, essentially anywhere you see x, you're going to replace that with negative 6. And so we have 7 times negative 6 minus 3 all divided by 5. 7 times minus 6, that's going to be negative 42. Negative 42 minus 3, that's negative 45. And then we divide by 5, they give us negative 9. 51. Which of the following equation best describes the function? So they say 2 is mapped to 5, 5 is mapped to 8, 8 is mapped to 11, and 11 is mapped to 14. What equation best describes the function? Again, a question like this is best solved through trial and error. So is the answer A, B, C, or D?
B.
D as in dog?
Ball.
Oh, ball. All right, so boy. And that is correct. If you notice, they're just adding 3 to x every time. 2 plus 3, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 3, 11, 11 plus 3, 14. So y is equal to x plus 3. (52). The range of x, which maps to x cubed for the domain -2, -1, 0, 1, 2 is A, B, C, or D. Now the answer for this question is going to be D. Remember, whenever you cube a negative number, the result is going to be negative. And if you cube a positive number, the result is going to be positive. So -2 cubed is going to be -8, right? And when you look at the 4 options there, the only one that starts with -8 is D. And it's also very important that you ensure that the numbers are in the correct order. So 8, -1, 0, 1, 8. The order wouldn't matter for this question because everything is organized properly, but there might be a question where they swap the order of things and ask you to pick which set is correct. So just be mindful of that. '53 refers to the following diagram of a transformation. We have PRQ, and we have a next object, which is P prime, R prime, Q prime. They want to know what transformation maps PQR, the P prime, Q prime, R prime. Is it a root? Go again? Is it a rotation, a reflection, translation, or an enlargement?
Sir, B.
B as in boy. Reflection, that is correct. Sometimes when you turn your mic off, as soon as you finish speaking, I don't hear the last part of what it is that you say. So just give it a second after you finish speaking and then you can turn off your mic. So 54, in which of the following polygons is the sum of the measures of the interior angles equal the sum of the measures of the exterior angles? Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. When I first read that question, I was not sure what it is that they're referring to, because that just seems off to me, right? When I'm thinking about it, the external angles, some of the external angles should be greater than the sum of the internal angles. But you have to consider how it is that they define what an external angle is. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing my screen, but I just switched to browser. I'm showing you guys some images here how they define exterior angles. Can you guys see it?
No,
Are
sir.
still showing? All right. Let me see screen. Right. You seeing it now?
Yes, sir.
Right. So for me, when I was thinking about exterior angles, I was thinking about all of this. Someone told me exterior angles, that's what I would be thinking about. All of this right here. But if you realize how they define it, it's not how it is defined, right? So they're only considering the portion of the angle that lies on the straight line, right? So they're only considering this portion right here for the external angle, this portion right here, this portion right here, this portion here, and this portion right here, right? And in that case, the sum of the external angles should be equal to 360 degrees. And we know that the internal angles of a triangle or the internal angle of any polygon is always equal to 180 multiplied by n minus 2, where n is the number of sides of that polygon. Right. So back to the question. Right. So the external angles, total external angle is equal to 360 degrees. And the total internal angle is equal to 180 multiplied by the difference of n minus 2, where n is the number of sides, right? Simplifying this, 180 can go into 180 one time, 180 goes into 362 times. So 2 is equal to n minus 2, right? And transposing, we get n is equal to 4. So only in a quadrilateral is the sum of the internal angles equal to the sum of the external angles. So D is the answer for 54. Right? Question 55. What is the image of the line y is equal to negative x when it is rotated in an anti-clockwise direction about O, or origin, through an angle of 90 degrees, right? So remember, anti-clockwise is in this direction. So anti-clockwise is this direction, right? Now the line y is equal to negative x bisects this quadrant, and so we have 45 degrees here and 45 degrees here and 45 degrees here and 45 degrees here, right? And so if we were to rotate this line 90 degrees, it would end up somewhere right here. And then this part would end up somewhere right here. And so we'll get a line. Let me use a different color. So we'll get a line looking like this. This is going to be 45 degrees here. 45 degrees here. So this line, after it is rotated by 90 degrees in an anti-clockwise direction, will become y is equal to x. So we're good with that explanation? I think we should be fine with that. And if you want to think about it from a programming standpoint, we just said that the gradient of perpendicular lines, meaning lines with 90 degrees between them, is always a negative inverse. So the gradient of y is equal to negative x is negative 1. So we're in a bracket here. Negative 1 x. The negative inverse of negative 1. So negative inverse 1 of negative 1. Right. Now it's going to be equal to negative 1 divided by -1. Then the two negative signs are going to cancel each other. So you're going to have 1/1. So you're just going to have 1. So the gradient of our perpendicular line is 1. And the only option out of A, B, C, and D that has a gradient of 1 is D. I think that is sufficient. Moving on to the next question. It says 56, says in the diagram, the translation. In the diagram, the translation by which ABC is mapped to ABC is represented by, and they want us to find what that number is, right? And so I'm going to pick 2 points. I'm going to pick a pair of corresponding points. This point right here. Let us undo that. Right. So I'm going to pick this point here, which is C prime. C prime. And I'm going to pick C. Right? Now, it was C plus some vector. Let's call that V. It's going to give us C prime. Right? So if we want to find V, it must be C prime minus C. Let's ask ourselves what is the position vector of C. So it's C prime, the position vector of C prime is going to be -6 units and -1 units. So at 6 units to the left are -6 and or 1 unit downwards or -1. So we have -6, -1. That's for C prime. Minus C. Now, position vector of C is going to be 1 unit to the left or -1. And then it's going to be 4 units downward or -4. So we have -6 minus -1, and we have -1 minus -4. Remember, you always add and subtract corresponding elements, right? So -6 minus -1 is the same as saying -6 plus 1, and -1 minus -4 is the same as saying -1 plus 4, right? So -6 plus 1, that gives us -5, and -1 plus 4, that gives us 3. And so our translation vector is -5, 3, or 5 units to the left and 3 units upwards. So our answer is A. Fifties. Right. Question 57. Let's see. Right. So it says in the triangle, angle BAC is 30 degrees and AB is 40 meters. The length AC in meters is, and they want us to determine which of these is the correct answer, right? So the angle that they've given us is this angle right here, it's 30 degrees. This 40 right here is our hypotenuse, and we know that it's the hypotenuse because it's a right angle triangle, and the hypotenuse is always opposite to the 90-degree angle, right? Now, in a relationship to this 30-degree angle right here, BC is our opposite and AC is our adjacent, right? And so if we wanted to find AC using the 30-degree angle, we'd have to use our cosine ratio, which says cosine, so cos 30 is equal to our adjacent, which is AC, divided by our hypotenuse, which is 40. So if we transpose that, we get 40 cos 30 is equal to AC. But now we're in a problem because when we look at our options, there is no cos 30 degrees in the options. But what we do know is that the cos of x is equal to the sine of 90 minus x, right? And so we can rewrite this as 40 sine 90 degrees minus 30 degrees is 60 degrees is equal to AC. Now, even if it is that you did not know this relationship up here, you could have also figured out the answer in the same way, just going to take more steps, right? Now, if this is 30 degrees right here, BAC is 30 degrees, and ACB is 90 degrees. It means that this angle right here is 60 degrees, right? And so in relationship to our 60-degree angle, AC is our opposite and BC is our adjacent, and the hypotenuse is always a hypotenuse, it doesn't change. Remember, you must be opposite to something and you must be adjacent to something. So the adjacent and the opposite is in relationship to the angle that you are focusing on. So let us just continue. So sine of 60 degrees would be equal to our opposite, which is AC, divided by our hypotenuse, which is 40. Right? Which, when we transpose for AC, we still get back 40 sine 60 is equal to AC. So I've just given you guys two ways to work out this question. Either way is applicable. You guys understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Was 40 sine 60. Question 58 now, which says that the following diagram shows an enlargement OAA prime, OBB prime, and OCC prime are straight lines. And triangle ABC is marked onto triangle A prime, B prime, C prime by an enlargement with center O. What is the scale factor of this enlargement? It's given us a half, negative half, 2, and negative 2. What is the factor of our enlargement?
2, sir.
2. All right, that is correct. Now I have a question for you. What does the negative sign mean in an enlargement? Does it mean anything special?
Yes, sir.
What does it tell you?
It means that it is on the opposite side of the line, that line that is bordering them, I guess.
That's correct, right? So if it was negative 2, then our enlargement would have been somewhere on this side of the graph. Then our last two questions. 59 is a bearings question. A plane is flying in the direction of 45 degrees and changes course in a clockwise direction to 135 degrees. The angle through which the plane turns is A 45 degree, B 90 degree, C 135 degrees, or D 270 degrees. Which is the answer?
Sure, B.
B, 90 degrees. That is correct. Right? And so remember, the plane would have been traveling in the direction of 45 degrees. There had been a clockwise turn, right? And then it would have been traveling in a direction of 135 degrees. And so in order for you to determine the degree of turn, you have to subtract 45 from 135 and you will get 90 degrees. That's because the question said clockwise. If the question had said anti-clockwise, you'd have to go in the opposite direction. You'd get 270 degrees, right? Or when you get that 90 degrees, you'd have to subtract it from 360. And our final question, which is question 60, it says if the angle P formed by the two equal sides in an isosceles triangle, PQR is P is equal to X degrees, what is the size of angle Q or angle R? So A, B, C, or D. Which one is it? My drawing is bad, but let's say it is an isosceles triangle. The answer is C. That's what you say?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Well, you should be sure the answer is C. Remember, you know, it's always the base angles in the isosceles triangle that are equal. So they did tell us that angle X is formed between the two equal sides. So it should be P right here, right? And so these two angles at the bottom would be equal. And remember, there's 180 degrees in total in the triangle. So it's, you subtract X from 180 and then divide by 2, you'll get the size of angle Q or the size of angle R. So C is indeed the answer, right? Right, so we've completed the 2023 paper. It's a few minutes before 1. Now, I just want to ask you guys if there's any question on the paper you want us to go back to quickly before we end the session today, or you guys are comfortable with all the explanations so far. While you guys are thinking about it, I want to say thanks for joining our session today. And I do wish you guys all the best in your exam next week.
So they explained 59.
59? All
Yes, sir.
right. All right. That is good. Sure. Right. So remember, with bearings, you always give directions relative to the north, right? So let us say that this is our north, and this angle is 45 degrees. So the plane was traveling in this direction, right? Now the question said that it took a clockwise turn. Remember, clockwise is in this direction. It's clockwise, right? And it ended up going to 135 degrees. And that's again relative to the north line, right? So let us say that this is where it ended up, and this is the 135 degrees, right? And so the angle of turn in a clockwise direction would be this angle right here, which would be 135 degrees, subtract 45 degrees to give you 90 degrees, right? So if you know that the entire thing right here is 135, and you know that this portion is 45, then the difference must be the degree of turn that the plane took, right? And what I was saying was that if it is that they said that the plane turned in an anti-clockwise direction, right? And it ended up going 135 degrees at the end, what you'd have to do is that you'd have to start from here and go in an anti-clockwise direction and get right here. And so that is going to be 270 degrees, right? And 270 degrees is equal to 360 less or 90 degrees if you went clockwise. Follow?
Yes, sir.
All right, so someone said 49. Back to question 49. Oh, 49? Right, so for perpendicular lines, their gradient is always a negative inverse. So if the gradient for the first line is M1 and M2 is perpendicular to it, it means that the gradient for M2, gradient M2 is going to be equal to -1 divided by M1. Right? Let's see if I can show you what that looks like. Give me a second. Not here. Not where I want to go. Right. So let's say we had the line y is equal to 2x plus 10. It should be plus 2x plus 10. Zoom out a bit, right? If you wanted a perpendicular line, it would be y is equal to negative 1 divided by 2, negative reciprocal of x, and then whatever our y-intercept is. And that angle right there would be 90 degrees. And you can see that whatever your y-intercept is, there's always a 90-degree angle between those two lines. So the gradient of perpendicular lines is always negative reciprocal of each other. Right. Anything else before we end? I take it that there is nothing else.